Hey everyone, welcome back to another weekly Roundup episode. I'm glad you found the time to join. The more episodes I make, the more games I see, the longer these episodes get. It's getting a little bit out of hand actually, but fine. Sit back, relax, enjoy what I conjured up this time. I've got some interesting new games. The PC Gaming Show aired, we got a lot of releases with mixed reviews and a super weird news article about a game so broken the players had to launch and rent their own servers. And the devs even refunded the server costs for that. That story is in the review section. It is about Frozen Flame. Timestamps are available if you're anxious for that one, but for now, reveals are up first. Here is some gameplay from Shadows of Doubt, an upcoming open-world detective game. That genre alone is interesting, I feel. What immediately catches the eye is of course the block-based graphics. The game claims to have total freedom, which could very well be possible because the cities are procedurally generated. There should be hundreds of citizens and they all have their own routines, daily habits, jobs and other people to hang out with. All of this results in a living, breathing world, and it adds to the gameplay elements because you will need to follow the NPCs around in order to crack some cases. The game has multiple approaches to cases, from breaking in, bribing, or just good old-fashioned police work. Completing jobs nets you cash, which you can use to upgrade your apartment. If the game actually delivers on all of these promises, this could be something worthwhile. It releases early next year. Then, some survival building game, because that's a large part of games these days. Here is Coreborn Nations of the Ultracore. What a name. This is a social survival sandbox game set in the world of Ultracore. The game combines three major pillars: a survival sandbox, a social hub, and adventures. It's lighthearted, this one, no zombies, that's good. We'll get zombies later this episode, but this is a much more chill building game, it seems, with three races: the Hedonists, Slormancers and Steam Dwarves. There's just not an awful lot of information available just yet, but I thought I would share this one anyway. On the topic of weird, Dynopunk got revealed as well. It is an ironic adventure in a world inhabited by dinosaurs. It's a repair shop simulator that allows you to influence the mood of your clients. At the same time, you'll have to sort out your private life and chase your dreams. But wait till you hear the plot, because it gets better. You play as a T-Rex on Earth, the last T-Rex on Earth even. He tries to build a time machine to travel back to the past and find true love. If this isn't a good storyline, I don't know what is. We stay in the realm of weird because this is the next game. I've never heard about this, I'm sure I would have remembered. This is Clash Artifacts of Chaos. It's one of those stereotypical game names, but not so much a stereotypical game. That is not necessarily a good thing, by the way. I have a hard time figuring out what this game even is, by watching the trailer, that is. The yellow giant, that's you, and he's a martial arts master, because of course he is. And the black fluff in the background, that's Boy, who doesn't look like a boy really, and Boy has special powers. That is why an evil queen thing unit wants to get her hands on Boy. It's weird, and if you like weird, this could be something. I'm not sold personally, but I'll keep an eye out. Gonna be hard to get immersed in a world as messed up as this one, I feel, but that's just one of my main concerns. Then, something a bit more realistic, at least graphically, because this is the Isletide Hotel, where an absent father must rescue his teenage daughter from an eclectic cult before their final night at the hotel. Save Eleanor Malone in this eccentric live-action mystery where every decision affects the story. I do like games like these, like Her Story or Immortal. This one isn't from Sam Barlow, who is a pioneer of the genre, but from Wales Interactive, to no one's surprise, a Welsh studio making primarily games like this, as it turns out. They are completely independent, and it is their mission to blur the lines between video games and film, which this game might just very well do. The release is next year. And final game in this section, this is ATAK, an RTS game which at first glance looks a bit like an auto-battler, but it seems you're actively controlling the units here, and the game mainly revolves around finding the perfect moment to attack, dodge and making use of the environment. It looks fun, this one. It has fast-paced combat, dynamic interactive environments, a medieval fantasy setting. It's easy to learn with only 3 buttons apparently, but hard to master. The game promises a challenging AI, and if you're done with that, PvP is also on the table. There's no release date just yet. Then, announcements. Superfuse, the cool cel-shaded ARPG from Stitch Heads Entertainment, is launching into early access on January 31st. I have been playing the demo a bit, and what is by far the biggest selling point of this game, apart from the combat, which felt good, is the skill system. You have the ability to mix and match skills and supporting skills to your heart's content, and the options seem endless. More importantly, there's no real cost to all of this, making you create the most ridiculous combinations possible, and while it may not be exactly balanced, it is a ton of fun. Sometimes I don't need balance in my life, I just want to be able to stomp the hordes of enemies the game throws at me with homegrown skill combinations, and that is exactly what this game offers. Once Human released another gameplay video, which you're watching right now. This game previously went under the name of Project EOE. It is developed and published by Starry Studio, and at first sight it's just another third-person action survival zombie game. I do like what I'm seeing in this trailer, however. It is pretty cool the way the action flows. It's not all gameplay here, it's partly cinematic, but you get a decent idea about what this game offers. More specifically, Once Human is a multiplayer open-world survival game set in a strange post-apocalyptic future. It's got all these purple, gooey, glowing things in the enemies on your back. I'm not sure what's going on there, but it is somewhat intriguing. You can unite with friends to fight monstrous enemies, uncover secret plots, compete for resources, and build your own territory. It could be an interesting game which releases next year. Necrobouncer announced a release date, December 8th. This launches on Steam. It is a dungeon crawler, pixel art style, bit of a bullet hell as well by the looks of it, and you're killing drunks, because that is what bouncers do, I guess. And of course it wouldn't be a game of this day and age without a roguelite element, so expect to improve over time, a tried and tested strategy by now. Then there's an announcement from the solo dev of Tavern Master, a very cute tavern simulator game with raving reviews. I highly recommend this one. There's going to be one more update on this game, likely in January, and after that the game is no longer getting development updates. The solo dev from Untitled Studio is already prototyping a new game in the same genre, so that's exciting news. And even more exciting is that he's taking all the lessons learned from Tavern Master into the new game. He made a list and everything. Especially the technical limitations that are in place now are limiting him from developing the game further, and the reason for those technical limitations is that he doesn't want to break save files, but that also means there's only so much he can do. So instead of trying to fix all of that, he just focused on a new game, which is perfectly fine. This game is in a completely released state and it's a really good game. More future plans, this time for Book of Travels, the tiny online multiplayer RPG that suffered a terrible launch, mainly because it was simply not a good game. They were forced to let go 60% of the studio due to bad sales, but have since been completely transparent with the community and are for quite some time now on a path of redemption. This path continues with this update, with the main storyline getting expanded again over the next few months. You see, up until now, most updates contained primarily fixes, since it launched in October last year. This is about to change, with, for example, more tutorials, which are sorely required because I played this game as well back in the day. I couldn't figure out for the life of me what I was supposed to do, honestly. There will be vehicle improvements, more quests with an entire new area opening up, a journal and log, weather changes with actual effects on the world, improvements to the food system, fishing for fun and survival, and improvements to the battle system. Seems the future is a lot brighter. The game really is picking up speed. It's garnered over 1,000 reviews by now at an 82% rating, and I'm glad to see this early access game is actually going places. Then a delay for Forever Skies. It's not going to take forever probably, but it will take until the first half of next year. Reason is the unexpected interest in the game, with over 80,000 people playing the demo and providing feedback, which made the devs realize they had to change up their game a bit more before showing it to the grander audience, even though they're releasing it into early access at first. You only get to make a first impression once, and it is a good thing they're taking an early access launch seriously instead of making the decision to launch anyway and fix the game during early access. I feel if you already know certain elements aren't working, it is completely legit to just delay and work on that first, so the game is much better at EA launch and thus has better reviews. It's long-term thinking, a rare feat in this industry, but it does still exist and I'm happy to hear it. Warhammer 40k Chaosgate Daemonhunters, that is the tactical XCOM-like game set in the 40k universe, in case you're getting confused by all of these 40k titles, is planning to release a free update in December, the holiday giveaway month after all. The update doesn't have a name yet, but the press message states that the forces of Nurgle will soon receive new reinforcements and armaments. Reinforcements are the anti-armor Plague Marine, a Flesh Mower Drone and a Noxious Blight Bringer, also ripping away armor with Corrosive Blight, I'm sure. Alongside these Death Guard reinforcements, there will also be a number of performance improvements and optimizations. Then, finishing off here with something crazy and furry, it is Gori Cuddly Carnage, where you play as a badass murder kitty on a death-dealing hoverboard. This is a third-person skate and slash set in a neon-glowing futuristic world filled with intense destruction and fast-paced combat. This is just total madness from the Swedish devs of Angry Demon Studio, who previously made well-received horror games. This, however, is quite something, if I'm honest. Have a look at the trailer and see for yourself. There's no release date yet for this one. Lovely people, if any of these games look interesting, be sure to wishlist them, it helps the devs out a lot. Similarly, you can subscribe to the channel and like the video or even share the video, that helps me out a lot. Proceeding with the Patch Plaza, bringing an overview of patch news. We got a content patch from the Slormancer, the Luxuriant Update Part 1, because they always release in 2 parts. Sit back and grab a beer, this is a big one. Starting out with 5 new foes that will strengthen the armies of the Slormancer, the Puddling Hermit, the Zombie Peasant, the Shepherd, the Unstable Imp and the Plague Doctor. There's a new environment which only sometimes spawns in the Battlefield Expedition so far, because this patch didn't bring the campaign, that is in Part 2. Also new in Battlefield Expeditions, Superior Elites. They have a superior life pool and come with up to 4 elite affixes, so these monsters behave a lot more like elites in other ARPGs, and they will bring a good dose of variety. Previously affixes weren't a thing, elites simply had a few other mechanics compared to their regular counterpart. There are 20 elite affixes, by the way. And these affixes, they're also called cataclysms, that is what the game calls them, and there will be 5 new cataclysms that have been added to the game, which basically are the modifiers that can roll on monsters in the Great Forge. Fire, Ice, Lightning, Light and Shadow Strikes, those are the new ones, providing that specific element to attacks as well as several ailments. And yes, the game has both lightning and light damage. Some existing cataclysms are nerfed because they were very obnoxious, and this is a very good change. For example, the Replicant Cataclysm only now has a 30% chance to summon another enemy instead of a 100% chance, and the Reincarnation one provides now a 25% chance for enemies to revive instead of 100%. Also, the Invulnerability one, perhaps the most unfun cataclysm of all, was heavily nerfed. Great changes actually, because rolling those modifiers for 5 waves in the Great Forge was a total drag. Life and Mana Leech got reworked. Basically the leech is capped now and it works over a longer period of time, 5 seconds. You can't overleech anymore. This all sounds very scary, but at least in my build, which for mana completely relies on Mana Leech, the changes didn't impact the build at all after a little bit of testing. I think we're completely fine here. Maybe the Health Leech is more problematic, but that remains to be seen. It seems fair either way though, Leech was extremely strong. To compensate, life and mana on hit have been buffed significantly. Some smaller changes, the epic stat pool of items has been cut in half. That can actually be a good thing, because rolling those modifiers is expensive. With half the pool you have much higher chance on a good roll after all. The stats differ depending on the current equipment that you're trying to craft, so you know, the roll affixes on gloves are different than on boots. The Slorm Temple Keeper and his traps are nerfed a bit at higher difficulties, they should be slower overall. What's faster are the bridges that are rising, meaning you'll be able to complete the levels much faster because you were often waiting for those bridges to rise. And finally, you get much more random pure Slorm in there while doing the temple. So overall, a bunch of buffs. It's a great patch, really. Not a whole lot of content to be fair, but the balancing changes make a lot of sense. Then, another great game, Farthest Frontiers from the makers of Grim Dawn. This isn't an ARPG, it's a super elaborate city builder, and it got a big update too, version 0.8. This is a massive addition to the game with an extensive list of new buildings, features, quality of life improvements and bug fixes. Here are a few highlights. Production limits can now be set from within the resource window and or from the building windows. Many of the game's systems and windows have been updated with tutorials, decorations have been added to beautify your town, such as festival poles, ornamental trees, flower urns, bench plazas, and new fence types. Houses now have a detailed desirability bar that shows progress towards housing tiers. And finally, villager AI has received numerous upgrades that will make them more efficient and intelligent at performing their tasks. Some news about the Last Oricru, a game I compared to Gothic after playing the rather extensive demo because I'm old. It's also a game that released a month ago and didn't do all that well. The game sits currently at a 65% user rating on Steam, although recent reviews are way more positive at 77%. The devs released patch 1.1, bringing a bunch of free armor pieces to the game, which you see on the screen right now, but more importantly, a ton of fixes for bugs people were complaining about. Then, releases. Looking back at what released last week, which were so many games, but we've got some interesting stories here. Flateye, a resource management sim with an emphasis on story and narrative choices, released for €19 on Steam. It's getting a 76% user score and critics agreed overall, scoring it a 78 strong on OpenCritic. Mick Fraser from God is a Geek had this to say about the game, quote, "Flateye is not without its ideas or charms, but in trying so hard to be provocative, the devs may have overplayed their hand." End quote. That overplaying the hand refers to a somewhat preachy narrative, some people feel. You read this from the Steam users as well. Besides, many bugs were reported around launch. Then, a Gladiator RPG roguelite, We Who Are About to Die. It is now into early access, €22. It's getting an 88% user score from Steam. This game features in-depth career management and a unique physics simulated combat system. This is a good score for a solo dev project that just launched, so kudos there. Bendy and the Dark Revival, a first-person survival horror game set in the creepiest cartoon studio to ever exist, launched for €25. The people are loving this one on Steam. Around 2,000 reviews have this at an overwhelmingly positive rating of 95%. That is just excellent. For some reason, maybe because like 14 other games released this week, no critic reviewed this one. Next, Chinese city builder, Ballads of Hongye. It is only €10, but reviews aren't looking too good. 48% mixed on Steam. What went wrong here is that the city builder throws a whole bunch of mandatory goals at you, which you need to complete in order to progress the game. I could make a joke about China here, but they don't have YouTube anyway, so, whatever the reason, players expected they would have just a city builder where you can determine what your city looks like instead of the Chinese devs. Turns out that's not the case. The game is the exact opposite. In fact, you're being forced into certain build orders, and that ain't fun. Then, Floodland, a society survival game set in a world destroyed by climate change. This one gets mixed reviews too, only 51% on Steam. It is €30, which I feel is pushing it for a city builder, and Steam users report a whole bunch of game-breaking bugs. Plus, every run is apparently the same to a large number of people. Critics were more favorable, scoring it a 75 strong on OpenCritic, with Hiram Cryer from Rock Paper Shotgun saying, quote, "Vile Monarch's post-apocalyptic city builder puts its people first to great success, but walks a fine line between providing too much or too little to do." End quote. Somerville, a game I was very excited about, didn't fare much better than the previous two. This €24 game has a 57% mixed rating on Steam, with gamers reporting bad performance, boring story and frustrating gameplay mechanics. OpenCritic has this at a 72 fair, which is fairly low, but not as low as PC Gamer rated it, a 45 out of 100, with John Bales saying that, quote, "Somerville never hits its stride, thanks to flat direction and frustrating mechanics." End quote. The mixed feelings continue with Edengate, The Edge of Life. It is also on the edge of being a bad game with another 50% user rating. This one is only €7, but it is just 1.5 hours long. That's normally fine, I feel, if a game has an interesting story or something that makes it stand out, but this does not seem to be the case here. On top of that, players are reporting graphics issues with resolutions not being saved properly, and you have to set your resolution every time you start the game. But most of all, this is just a walking simulator without a satisfying story or ending. Bravery and Greed, the beat-em-up roguelite dungeon brawler, did well. It is €20, it has an 85% user score, and OpenCritic scores it a strong 82. Game Grin rated it a 9 out of 10, with Alan Dunitz saying, quote, "Bravery and Greed is a retro-looking roguelite title with great solo and multiplayer modes to check out with friends. Each run will be different, with different choices that will totally alter the focus of your run. This game is challenging but very rewarding." End quote. Then Pentiment, this is from Obsidian and that is a good studio. It costs 20 euros, has a 95% positive rating with OpenCritic agreeing on a mighty 86. IGN even scored it a 10 out of 10 with Liana Hafer saying, quote, Pentiment is a clever medieval detective story with a gorgeously realized world that I can hardly recommend highly enough, end quote. Top-down twin-stick shooter and solo dev project Zero Sievert released into early access for 20 euros. Steam players are loving this one as expected honestly, rating it a 90% on the platform. An Epic exclusive you are not missing out on, Goat Simulator 3. Epic means no user scores, but critics did rate this one with a 72 fair. Although Lopez from Atomics had a good summary I feel, and I quote, in short, if you enjoyed the original and want to take that to larger proportions, it's obvious that you're going to like it for how simple its humor is and also for its graphical performance. It is totally a satire made into a video game and, if we're honest, it fulfills its function of entertaining, end quote. Seems like a fair assessment, it's just more of the same thing. Then, survival crafting RPG Frozen Flame, released into early access. It is more like Frozen Frame. Get it? That's a bad performance word joke. On top of all this, what wasn't so cold was the servers, because they burned down, like my self-esteem after writing these two sentences. This launch went about as bad as technically possible, with entire countries, like, the United States, not being able to connect to public servers. They were then forced and asked to rent their own servers, which is honestly hilarious, asking players to rent their own servers to play your video game. To credit the devs, they did offer refunds if you rented that server under certain conditions, but it cannot be overstated how ridiculous this situation really is. You can play the game on a local server, of course, meaning you would host on your own PC, but apparently that is also a complete disaster with constant disconnects. This is a rough one. Steam rates it at a 59% at the moment, which I feel is still generous if you read all these stories, but it seems this 30 euro game, by the way, is just not in a good place right now. Organs Please, the Papers, Please ripoff where you rip out organs of human beings, is doing great. The early access game costs 14 euros, which is very reasonable, and all 36 reviews at the time of writing are positive, a 100% perfect score. I'm glad this one is doing well because it seems like a fun game. Let's look ahead at what is releasing this week. The 22nd of November, we have Gungrave GORE, a stylish third-person action shooter by South Korean studio Iggy Mob, in which you take on the role of Grave, a gunslayer mowing down tons of enemies in a gory ballet of bullets. This isn't exactly subtle, and boy does this trailer look cheap and poorly directed, with the tagline thrown in your face time and time again. Doesn't mean the game is bad though, but it doesn't bode well either. Fortunately, this game appears on Game Pass, so you can check it out for basically free, or you pay 50 bucks on Steam for this thing, but I'd rather get 5 months of Game Pass instead. Also 22nd of November, Ship of Fools releases. Ship of Fools is a seafaring cooperative roguelite. Set sail, man the cannons and battle sea monsters through the tempestuous seas of the archipelago. This isn't a very serious game, and we've seen a few of these titles recently. The guys that made Enderall, the RPG based in the Skyrim engine, are making one of these too, and I've seen a few others. This game features frantic nautical combat with another shipmate in co-op or as a solo sailor, colossal leviathans to challenge the hardiest of sailors, unique fools with special abilities to help you on your journey, 100 plus trinkets and artifacts to collect and combo for winning strategies, and swashbuckling hand-drawn artwork to put the wind in your sails. Our final game is the biggest one, Evil West, the no-nonsense gun-blazing vampire killer set in the Wild West. This is a fun and funky combination of good old-fashioned action games and some modern technology to make it all look so shiny. And like some critics already noticed about Evil West, they don't really make games like these anymore, which is a real shame. But soon you can play one and sort of marvel back at how games used to be, uncomplicated, violent and a lot of fun. Talking Steam Deck and demos, Arran, Book of Heroes is a game that got recommended to me. It looks very cool, that's for sure. You're seeing me play the demo here, and it's overall a joy, really, to play this. It's fun, but I do feel it might get old fairly fast. So far, you can choose 5 heroes to play with: warrior, druids, hunters, berserkers, you name it. I found some variation in playstyle, but not too much, because you're still mostly circling around enemies, dodging, blocking, and then trying to find a window to hit. Combat is more skill-based than your usual ARPG, and that's because this is a twin-stick control scheme, so you move using WASD and you attack with the mouse, plus you have one special ability. It's pretty simple, it might get old like I mentioned, mentioned, but overall a fun experience for at least the demo length, which is maybe 1 hour long. It should release in May 2023. And now it's on to the final section, free games. Epic has some goodies for Rumbleverse for free. It offers Evil Dead the Game, a game inspired by all 3 original Evil Dead films, as well as the Starz original Ash vs Evil Dead television series. I don't think I've ever heard of those at all, actually. And then Dark Deity, a strategic game in the same vein as Fire Emblem. I'm not sure there's actually a genre for these games. If you know, put it in the comments, I guess, but that should tell you enough. Fire Emblem. Uncle Phil from Game Pass has many games on there again. A few we already covered, like Pentiment and Somerville. Then they launched a really cool game, Ghost Lore, an East Punk action RPG where you fight monsters from Southeast Asian folklore. This is early access, it's already on Steam, but highly rated already, and apparently it's a good game. There's Lapin, which is French for rabbit, and the reason it's called Lapin is because this is a game about rabbits. A 2D platformer game featuring a group of brave rabbit explorers, actually. I don't know why I'm even talking about this. And finally, more early access because RTS game June Spice Wars is available now as well. And that's it. This was a very long video. If you stuck around to the end, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions or remarks, put them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and you want more like this, consider liking the video or even subscribing. Thanks for watching. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.